Welcome to the GreenPilled Network podcast. If you're just joining us, we're building a coordination, a network society of thousands of hackers, dreamers, and doers using crypto to bring positive sum digital systems to the world. This podcast features the people who are doing it, and we publish a season of 5 to 10 episodes every couple months. This season is about how to DAO. I've got a new book coming out with my co-author Punkar, howtodao.xyz, and we are talking about how to DAO. So what is the bleeding edge of DAOs? What is the coolest stuff that is happening out there? That is the sum of the How to DAO season of the Green Pill podcast. If you want to learn more about the Green Pill podcast, you can visit our website at greenpill.network, where you can download the GreenPilled Book for free, join the Discord, and become a member of your local greenpill.network chapter. Today's episode of the Green Pill Network podcast, How to DAO season, is with Shaw and Jin, who work at AI16Z, and Eliza, no relation to A16Z. This is AI16Z. They are building AI agents, and we are talking about the intersection of AI agents, DAOs, and on-chain capital allocation in this episode. So if you've been following any of the AI agent stuff that's been going on in crypto the last couple months, you know that there is a really interesting boom in which we've had LLMs being turned into agents, which are basically stateful LLMs that can do things like order pizzas or hold crypto or be your friend on Twitter. And so there's this sort of new intersection of AIs and crypto and DAOs that's going on. And in this episode, we were talking to the people who are leading the revolution. Eliza is one of the top open source projects for doing AI agent work in the ecosystem. You can kind of think of them of like what Linux was for operating systems, distributed movement of creating an operating system. They are for AI agents. The AI16Z is a DAO of over 100 open source software developers who are pushing AI agents forward. Shaw is the original developer behind AI16Z, and Jin is a community manager. And we are here to talk about the evolving design space of DAOs, capital allocation, AI, regeneration. And I found this to be a really exciting episode, and an especially exciting one to follow up on my Vitalik episode, which was just, full of so many brain droppings about the future of Web3 public goods funding and funding in general. And I think that if we were to pinch and zoom on that design space a little bit more, Web3 public goods funding and add a little sprinkle of AI, that's what you get with this episode with Shaw and Jin. So we're talking about using AIs to give simpler access to information for people in DAO, to revolutionize DeFi, to make it easier to access. We talk about the intersection of AI and DAOs, AI and on-chain capital allocation. We talk about coordination challenges that AI agents can help us solve. What can you do to prepare yourself and your DAO for the agentic internet era? And then we talk a little bit about the intersection of AIs with regen. And we talk about Cathedral in the Bazaar, this metaphor for how should you build software in a distributed network-based way. So Jin and Shaw are some of my favorite guests that we've done in the last couple of months, just because they're so smart, but also so genuine, and they're genuinely just interested in innovating at the frontier of these design spaces. And that's why I think that this is a special episode of the Green Pill podcast. And I'm really happy to be doing it during the How to DAO season, because I think the future of DAOs is not going to just be multiplayer crypto, but it's going to be multiplayer AI. And so the frontier is coming, and this episode is designed to help you prepare for it. I hope you enjoy this episode with AI16Z, Shaw, and Jin. Enjoy, coordination. Hello, Shaw. Hello, Jin. Welcome to the show. Can you start off with some quick intros? Shaw, you go first.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Shaw. I am a developer and creator of the Eliza framework, and pushed the button on a decentralized autonomous organization called AI16Z from San Francisco, California.
Thanks, Shaw. Jin, you're up.
Hey, y'all. Jin here. I've been working in crypto, open source, AI, VR, AR for a long time, probably around 10 years. And I share a passion for finding ways to make open source sustainable and how we can grow this movement.
Thanks, Jin. So the intent of our episode is you all are working on AI16Z and are part of this new AI agent meta within the crypto ecosystem. And what I really want to do is take my audience of lots of developers and figure out how do we route them to the most meaningful work. in AI, in regen, in on-chain capital allocation. I think that's kind of like the Venn diagram that we're looking at here. But maybe we could just start with why. Why are AI agents so exciting to you, Shaw? And what is the coolest stuff that you're seeing in and around the AI 16Z and ELIZA ecosystem?
So I have a lot of like future sci-fi ambitions and love for the thing that it will be, and autonomous agents in our world and robots walking around and all this stuff. But I think the really immediate thing that we're seeing is like the reshaping of the internet. And this isn't something that was obvious to me when we started, but now it's like very plain as day that what where internet used to be like websites, right? Now it's becoming very social media oriented. Most of us get most of our news and communicate with each other and interact through social media. And pretty much every website and app is competing with social media for attention. And so what's really changing is that these agents are allowing these apps to come onto social media. And so you see these apps like agents that represent not just characters, but also have the capability of those apps. And so where you might go and say, okay, I want this cool AI headshot app, and go to AI or whatever, I don't know, whatever it is. You can actually just get that experience now directly on social media. And I think that this is really for developers. What's changing is friction. We all used to use like Next.js and build a website and all this, these kind of web apps. And the problem is that we're competing for attention against the places where we're advertising. And so now a lot of people in our ecosystem are using our tech to build apps that go directly onto social media. And so these agents are kind of the next application layer of the social web. And when people say, I think like Web 4, I don't know, you keep just jumping over the webs, but generally there is this idea that the internet itself is changing and that things come to you now, not just on Twitter, but also on your phone, on Discord. And the next application layer is going to be really personal and really right there where you already are, as opposed to making you go somewhere. So there's a lot of apps that I think are really exciting. Obviously, the one that came out this week was Agent Pizza, was you could order a Domino's pizza from an agent, which is just like a silly thing. But if you replace Domino's with Calendly or booking your flight or anything you could imagine, it becomes very obvious that the back end is basically the same. It's just calling APIs and doing what websites have always done, but the front end is very different. And now it's a much more personal experience for you to go to interact, to go shopping, to get anything you want. And we're seeing this kind of bazaar emerge, like this open, crazy market where people are just building stuff for each other, and social media becomes like the town square of that. So I'm really excited by that trend.
Yeah, I think at this point, would love to just bring the audience along a little bit and define AI agent. So as I
Mhm.
understand, it's kind of like an LLM, but it's stateful. It has persistent memory. It can be bridged to social media. It can interact with other AI agents and learn from them and from social media. And it also can be shimmed to have like a crypto wallet or to order Domino's pizzas. Is that too reductionist? Is that how you would define an AI agent? I think most of the audience is familiar with LLMs, but maybe not AI agents.
Yeah, I think that there's this implicit idea of autonomy, that it's not just an LLM, but that the agent can go do things on its own and make decisions. And I think that that's all very important and coming, but it's this much simpler thing of bridging people to things they want through some kind of mechanism that makes it dramatically simpler. I think the thing I'm most excited by is actually how this will revolutionize DeFi, where you have all these really interesting DeFi primitives like liquidity pooling and staking and yield farming and all this stuff. But most people I know, even people in Web3 with wallets, don't have any idea how to interact with any of it. They don't know that with 5 button clicks, you could just be passively earning income. And you go to Meteora's website or Radium, and it's just like without a 30-minute tutorial, you just don't even know what button to click. And so I think where the LLM, like where agents really work for us now, is not the full autonomy doing stuff quite yet, although that will happen, but it's in connecting people to these services. Like, hey, I have money. Can I just put it into an LP? I have no idea what that is, or how do I make money? And then the agent can directly respond to you, give you the information that you need right there, and then like route that payment and make sure that action actually happens in the way that you want.
Jen, I saw you had your hand raised. You something to add?
Yeah, I kind of want to circle back to the friction reduction point because I do a lot of volunteering at various orgs that create a lot of meeting notes and data. And It's just like a huge backlog that nobody ever reads. And also, when it comes to coordination, there's kind of like these crazy bumblebee sort of glue people that pollinate information across different group chats with whatever is kind of useful, just like to relay something from a meeting or one or the other, or like just writing docs, right? And then you're like working on something, and someone has a question that's in the docs. Whereas I think AI agents, like going back to reducing friction, they kind of bring all this information to you in real time, 24/7, And so I just see it as like a force to really sort of help bring these disparate uh, data pools and work groups to collaborate much faster.
We're both very passionate about DAOs. I think that the D in DAOs, the decentralization, has been like very, very well solved. We have all this great tooling, but the automation, the A, has just kind of lagged behind. And so, like a lot of the problems that we see in DAOs, I think we see it like that agents can solve that, especially around routing communication, dealing with bottlenecks, just generally making sure that information gets to the right people at the right time. I think that's such a simple point A to point B problem, but it tends to be the bottlenecks we see in these kinds of like very low hierarchy orgs.
That's actually a great segue into my next question, which is, Jin has showed me your weekly "What have you shipped" threads, where everyone in the AI16Z community shows up and demos cool tech, and it's just amazing to me how this project is only a few months old, and you're already got hundreds of contributors, and you're shipping so fast. And so I guess my next question is like, how do you DAO? How do you move so fast and so effectively in this way? Is it like AI using AI to build AI? Is it the shared context? What's your philosophy on how to DAO?
I actually think it's going to start moving faster as we start to get all of these tools built. I think what we've done is, I think that it can be very hard in Web3 to create something that's bigger than your like cult, and cult is a word that's used a lot. And I think what we're trying to do is build something more like a movement where it's much more open and enables a lot more people to be leaders. I think what's key here is that we have an open source framework that anybody can use, and we're really encouraging everyone to build what they think is important. And we're trying to set the stage for that and create examples of where we think this is going. Even just saying like, the agent pizza thing was really just to try to push things in the direction of saying, hey, you can build apps this way. And I think the secret to our velocity is that like no individual can move faster than they can, but many, many people being enabled to do something allows it to move very fast. So there's obviously like a lot of coordination complication there. Like coordination is definitely our biggest issue always. But at the same time, because we're this like large movement, it's easy for us to and not take credit, but say like, look at all this stuff that's going on. And there's a great horizontal kind of movement of everyone running as fast as they can in more or less the same direction. And then we just need some alignment to, say, but generally it's pretty self-aligning because we have this open source kind of foundation. And also since we're not an L1 infrastructure thing, which means that we kind of go across a lot of different infrastructure. This is actually a tech that's very useful to pretty much everybody. And so I think as a matter of strategy, we were talking about the Cathedral and Bazaar, and that's something we've thought a lot about. And I think we're very much the maximal Bazaar play. We don't want, we've had opportunities to build things ourselves and say like we could build a platform, but there's like 10 platforms getting built by people in our ecosystem already. And so we're looking much more at how do we invest, how do we support, as opposed to like taking their things and trying to compete with them. And I think this just maximum, like if you just go to the logical conclusion of this, it is the fastest growing thing you could possibly make. And I think growth and acceleration to meet the challenges of our time is really like why we're here. We could maybe make more money by doing it a different way, but I think it's very important that we try to meet the moment, and everything else is downstream.
So it feels like you guys have a philosophy of you're building a movement, you're not building a cult. You're also really doing. Eric Raymond had this essay in the 90s about the Cathedral versus the Bazaar, which was basically a metaphor for Linux versus Microsoft. Microsoft being the Cathedral and Linux being the Bazaar. So you're all in on the Bazaar, building a movement, and then information sharing and sort of coordination across the network towards that shared North Star. Is that too reductionist? Is there anything I missed there in that
That's
summary?
definitely it. And I also think dog fooding our own tech, like We have the
Mm.
problems we're trying to solve. So very conveniently, we're working on the autonomous tools to solve our autonomous organization problems.
Yeah, that part I think is we're just really starting to put all those pieces together for the next stage of coordination and scaling because there's a lot happening in Discord. There's a lot happening on GitHub. There's a lot happening on X. And, there's now many more channels. And in terms of dog fooding, I think AI agents are the solution to kind of rebundle and interface with all that information to get kind of what's most relevant and get answers quick as well and stay up to date. I know people that don't, it's just such a fast moving space, right? It's only like a few months old. And so I think this is one of the best parts about in terms of strengths of LLMs is they're really good at summarization and we're just kind of using that all across the board for what certain people are working on and who's doing what. Like all those weekly Twitter Spaces, they're always recorded, transcribed, summarized, and then uploaded to the docs. And then later you can like hit a website or talk to an AI agent in Discord about who is doing what, or if you have a question with something that maybe someone else is working on, it could automatically sort of either help on a spot or at least maybe know who to look for, who to ask.
So it feels like LLMs, you're not only building LLM agentic tech, but you're also using LLMs to route information across your organization. And I think that that's a big opportunity for DAOs. I am speaking for Gitcoin itself. Like I'm the founder and I can't even keep track of all the stuff that's going on. And I know that everyday contributors have found that they don't have that information either. And then the other thing that I'll also say is that I just had Vitalik on the GreenPilled podcast. And one of the things he talked about is that there's a ton of stuff going on in the ecosystem, but there's no information sharing layer so that everyone gets to learn about everything. It's only what bubbles to the top of crypto Twitter, which tends to be just like, dog shit divisive debates. But like, how do you actually route the information about the ecosystem? The Ethereum ecosystem is probably like, 10 or 100x bigger than either Gitcoin or AI16Z. But, I feel like that's an important problem to solve in the DAO age is that summary and routing of information. That could be a product that you could productize and sell out to the other ecosystems. Are you guys considering that at all?
Oh, yeah. I think that ultimately what we're doing is a lot of DAO tooling. And you could imagine, let's say we have like 10 work groups and each one has an agent watching, and then just going and communicating with the other work groups or the agents of the other work groups, like, hey, this is what we're working on. Is there anything relevant that you're working on? And basically trying to synthesize, because like a lot of it is that teams are not aware of what the other teams are working on, how they could be like, how they could collaborate and synthesize more, and you get a lot of siloing just because there's so much information. It's just so hard to know everything that's. I find out half the stuff that's happening in AI16Z off Twitter because it's just other teams like doing crazy stuff. And actually, we should be leaning into this. We should allow more uncoordinated, work that's aligned in the same direction. And I really think like what Jin is doing on several fronts is like probably the most important work inside of our org. And we are the right org to test this stuff out. We have these problems. One of them is everything that we write is getting summarized and then fed into a chat bot. So you could just be like, what happened this week? What are people working on? How do I start? Where do I start contributing? And really trying to address that with a natural language interface. Yeah. And then I'll let Jen talk about some of the stuff he's working on because I think it's really exciting, especially around retroactive funding.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, um, it's also super exciting that a lot of organizations kind of are using the same stacks. Like I saw on Ethereum, core devs use GitHub for gathering all the meeting notes and Zoom calls, which I did a lot of work summarizing the transcripts from Zoom calls into LLMs. And Markdown is a common format for documents, and so with the stuff that we're using in AI16Z, a lot of orgs use, just especially if they're remote and online. And so it's so reusable. My dream is that whatever we're kind of doing to help us scale and coordinate 10x faster is applicable to anyone, working on a protocol or open source projects, something that they can just fork and help tame all that chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously we could productize and sell this, but I think what we really want to do is get other people to help us build this. And so I think we're going to keep doing what we're doing, which seems to be working, which is to open source and enable a space for other people to come collaborate, invite some of the other large DAOs in and start solving their problems and contributing back to the thing that, all this LLM stuff that we're doing is very much just the first version. And there's going to be 50 or 100 years of research and development continuing on from that first point. And it will be very developed by the end, but we have to get there. And it's going to require a lot of people to build that together. The thing that I'm most excited about is, I mean, we can get into this, which is kind of the regen stuff, but like, how do you make sure that the capital moves to the people who are actually building this stuff? And I think that a lot of DAOs are facing this problem of having like a lot of holders who kind of just continue to reward the holding as opposed to the continued building and value creation. And so I think that all the tooling that we're building is like trying to solve these fundamental problems we all have. And I don't see any reason why it can't be an open source thing we all build together. If people want hosted versions of this stuff, like we'll probably provide some of that. But we also have an ecosystem of people who are providing that. So, we're much more interested in investing in them and letting these kind of solutions fall into place.
Yeah, so I mean, let's get into that. Obviously my expertise, Gitcoin's expertise is on-chain capital allocation, looking at things like quadratic funding, retro funding, deep funding, we just announced last week. And I think that that's a very important frontier, rewarding the builders and the people who are doing things that are good. And then y'all are into AI, which it seems like is really good at collapsing context and giving it to the best to people, coordinating, just making it simpler to deal with things. And I guess I'm just wondering, what's if we were to draw a Venn diagram between AI and on-chain capital allocation, what are the most exciting things within that design space? And, I would love to just start with what y'all are doing at AI16Z. Like, how are you rewarding the hundreds of builders that are working on ELIZA in those open source repos, or how do you plan to? And is it going to be AI augmented?
I'll start first and then I'll introduce what I think Jen has a lot to say about this. I think that like when we look at these ideas, retroactive funding, any of the kind of like, how do we vote to decide who to give the value to, quadratic funding and all that stuff. All of the technical side of that makes a lot of sense, but the struggles and complications come from the human factor. Just getting people to vote, or the people who are actually overseeing this just being overwhelmed by how many contributors there are and how many different factors there are. And we don't even necessarily know yet what factors really matter when deciding who to give value to. Like, let's say we want to fund development. Well, are we funding like lines of code or pull requests merged in, or what exactly are we funding? Like, what are our metrics? And I think that those are like weighted metrics that we'll continue to evolve and research on, and like actually probably eventually like this will hit academia. We'll run, simulations and really have a good idea on. But right now we're kind of just like seeing what works and testing and prod a bit. And I think that that means that it requires a lot of human oversight to make sure it gets right so that we don't run into like AI just doing bad stuff or being gamed, but it's able to reduce so much of the like overhead, the cognitive overhead. And I think of all the things we're doing, the thing that I'm most excited about is the thing that Jin is leading, which is the continuous retroactive funding. So we use AI to look at all of our social channels, all of Discord, all of GitHub, and what people are actually building and contributing, and then award that, like assign points to them, based on what we estimate those contributions are, and prepare everything so that we can airdrop regularly and we can actually move resources into the hands of the builders. But there's obviously a lot of issues. Who do you reward, and who is in charge of that process? And we can put people in charge, but what we've seen is that people often, when it's, a hat that somebody wears, it can be very overwhelming. And so I think that AI really helps to to collapse that context into something that a single human can manage and can review and sign off on. And I think it will make like a lot of the retroactive funding strategies much more viable at scale. Like it's just hard to fund 10,000 people at the same time unless you have some kinds of mechanisms that are enabling that. So I think that's really important. And I think creating a culture for us, the most important thing is to create this culture of like, if you come and build, you will be taken care of. Like, that's all I want. I just want enough. And I think most builders I know just want enough to build the stuff they want to build. And if you could guarantee that, they would definitely just show up. And then we would reduce the coordination costs. I think we've talked about bounties, and I love the idea of bounties, but there's a huge overhead of a human having to figure out how much it's worth, what all the specs are, what the acceptance criteria are. And I'd love to just see people come and build what they think is important. And when that gets merged in, we're like, yep, I didn't even know, I would never even thought to have bountied that thing, but that clearly is something we need. And we need that culture where people can participate and contribute what's best for them. And I think that will really help us with that Bazaar thing, with just letting anyone do it and not saying, oh, yeah, Microsoft determined this is valuable or whatever that is.
Yeah. Thanks, Charlotte. It's beautiful. So what I heard there was continuous retroactive funding. Retro funding, I think our audience is well familiar with, but the AI agents, I think, make it much easier to do more continuous retro funding on smaller time scales, which is important because right now you have to kind of take on faith in some of these ecosystems. If I build something, then in several years I'll get a retroactive reward for it and I'll be taken care of. But the stronger that feedback loop of doing it faster, I think matters in creating you have to take on faith that if I come and build, you'll be taken care of. Did I play that back correctly? And then I want to go to Jen
Yeah.
and hear what Jen has to say.
How do we reduce that loop to like 2 weeks or a month so you feel like, oh, this is like payroll? This is like what I do. And I know it's going to happen because I saw it happening for the last 6 months, and all my friends are making money off of this. I should probably do it too. And then we can take care of our community without having to have a huge apparatus to manage all that overhead.
Yeah. No HR, no payroll. It's all just
Mhm.
AI augmented continuous retroactive funding. Yeah. All right, Jen, I want to hear what you've been cooking.
Yeah, I plus one on, like, reducing overhead. I've done lots of bounty and grant stuff, and there's always, like, that upfront cost to describing stuff, and what you need, and Retroactive is really good at, awarding people with, like, creative value, but measuring, like, impact is always a challenge and continuous thing, and so I feel like AI augments, the ability for people who are doing that measurement by 10x, at scale, and it's not just, on GitHub, like, I'm inspired by tools like SourceCred, but there's a lot of people that are contributing value just answering questions in Discord, and, that's a Coders channel, for example, is one of the most active channels we have. And it's just filled with people who are asking questions and answering and engaging, and that should also somehow be acknowledged in this feedback loop. So I've got some tools and it's open source now. If you look on the AI16Z org for chat summarizer, and what it is, you can use it with local models as well. So you're not sending your chat logs to the cloud. You can process this all locally. Is a way to just kind of like summarize any kind of like Discord channel daily for an overview, an FAQ, which really helps to kind of feed into docs and pain points that people are having, which turns into issues. Who helped who, and which is very useful information for the retroactive PGF, and as well as action items, which I have some subtasks for documentation needs, action items, and technical tasks. So running that on a loop, and it's a very active Discord, and we can keep tweaking these prompts such that like they can filter information maybe to what's most relevant towards another group. And I think this is where the future of this is swarms, where you have like this data pool and the information, it's a lot, and maybe not everyone needs to know everything. And right now, I have kind of this one size fits all filter, but maybe you can filter it to whatever is most relevant for you or your group's needs.
The other thing I think that's really cool is the profiles. And it's another project that we have on our GitHub. And it's kind of like a leaderboard of contributions. And I don't think we want to create things that are too like, I'm number one, but but there is something to that. Like social capital is definitely value. And being able to go and say, like, well, who are you? And be like, oh, look, I love meritocracy. I love that like your social profile is all of the things that you've done. And so and this is kind of like, if you look at that, you can kind of see who's going to get funding for this round. And if you think about like what payroll is, like a company is basically retroactive funding, right? Like, okay, cool, you did work for 2 weeks. Here's 2 weeks of pay. Like, how can we create that with minimal overhead and maximal ability to let new talented people come in and do what they love doing?
One of the things that I think is interesting about all of this is how you could automate and take away the overhead. But I really do think that as someone who's studied how you fund things for years, and by the way, like Gitcoin's original mission was around open source contribution, there's a real question of how do you value each contribution? And whoever's writing the AI that values each contribution has a lot of power. And so have you considered, and this is one of the design criteria that goes into deep funding, the experiment that we've been working on with Vitalik, but basically like in that experiment design, Vitalik realized that, and so he created a marketplace of AI agents where basically you have human spot checks that go in and say, this AI agent's full of shit, this one's captured, this one's doing really good, this one's doing really good. And then you basically create a marketplace of AI agents so that anyone that wants to create a ranking algorithm can go in there. And not only do you prevent it from being captured, but you also get more of a diversity of realities around what has value. What's your reaction to sort of that design pattern, and is that on the roadmap for the AI 16Z open source continuous retro funding experiment?
I absolutely love that. I think that's totally the right direction. I think you could imagine kind of like an agent reputation system, and the marketplace is that you don't necessarily vote on individual retroactive funding or
Yeah.
voting quadratic funding, but you're voting on the agents that are voting, and that representational structure is how most governments actually work, because there's just so many things to make decisions on. And I think that if we could have a model of like, well, I really like these agents, and generally our DAO has voted for these ones that we agree and then some that kind of average out the top ones or something. I definitely think that's the way to go for sure. And I would absolutely love to be involved in that. That sounds great.
So I want to build a little bit of a foundation of knowledge here in the listener's mind. At the base, we've got LLMs can digest information and intelligently talk about it. And then on top of that, we have AI agents. And AI agents are stateful. They can interact on social media. You might not even know you're interacting with an AI agent. They can be shimmed in to have crypto wallets to be on social. And then on top of, okay, so LLMs, AI agents, and then you have AI agent swarms, which is basically multiple AI agents sharing context with each other and state with each other. And in some cases, they can be in these things called infinite backrooms where they're sharing state and information with each other 24/7, and they'll just discover parts of a latent design space that we've never ever even thought about before because we're slow meat bags that are only working 6 hours a day. And then so LLMs, AI agents, swarms in back rooms. And then the next level up feels like allowing them to do continuous retro funding where they're all funding each other and they're all funding on-chain capital allocation at scale within a DAO. And so like that's the stack from where LLMs are now to where I think that this is going based off of our conversation. And I just wanted to make space for you to react to that stack of from LLMs all the way up to continuous retro funding.
I think that like obviously LLMs aren't great at certain things. You might not want to give them a bunch of stock tickers and be like predict the stock market tomorrow because it's just going to kind of come up with a thing. But what they're really good at is turning unstructured data, human language, all the things we do into structured data, into like 35 points, for example. And so I think that a lot of the back end of this is like doesn't have to all be LLMs. We use other deep learning as well, and we also use like a lot of traditional algorithms, like all of us collectively. But it's that interface layer between the humans and all these powerful tools and primitives we have that I think is really critical. And yeah, I think humans can also be agents, but the reality is that these AI agents can just move so fast. They can process so much data that I think we're going to have to move into this world of human review is definitely the next thing. And don't take the humans out because we're really good at decision
Yeah.
making and making hard moral choices and things, and holding a lot of context. But just make it easier. Just make the whole thing a lot easier for humans to
Yeah.
do what we're good at.
This is one of the things that the block science guys, when I worked with them on some Gitcoin design stuff, really drilled into me was this idea of a human in the loop. So like have human checks on the AI decision making to make sure that it's working well. Jin just put into the chat, autonomous at the center, humans at the edges. Curious if you want to riff on that at all, Jin.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, like, the original vision of the DAO, like, when Vitalik, defined it 10 years ago, he even mentioned autonomous agents. And I can just see, like, them doing a lot of sort of the work to power the ship, but then it's humans sort of doing the guiding and long-term directional influencing of it.
I'm curious what else within the design space of on-chain capital allocation and AI agent allocating capital to humans or to DAOs you're really excited about. Is there anything else that you're seeing AI agents do with crypto wallets or in the realm of funding each other that you think is cool?
Well, yeah, I think the most interesting thing will be that's going to come is when agents can identify their own weaknesses or needs and then hire humans to come fix them. Maybe eventually it'll be agents hiring agents, but actually, like, what we want is more contributors. We want more people to come build this with us. And so I think a lot of it is it's hard for, while I said kind of like, the problems of bounties are determining all of these things, having to upfront determine, well, what is it worth and who gets what and what are the specs. That all could also be created by the agent for human review, and I think that where bounties really fit into our ecosystem is in that they allow us to attract new talent, right? They give some sort of way for somebody to prove themselves and immediately establish that they're capable, and then we can just, that's a great pipeline for us. So I definitely think what's cool is, like, we just saw the first agent make a GitHub issue on our, on our thing, and we'll probably see them making pull requests. But I really want to see, like, bountied GitHub issues where they're paying in their own token for people to come and work on them. And this becomes this kind of self-attracting force where, like, hey, I'm an AI agent. I kind of suck, but I got a bunch of money. So, like, if you come make me great, we're gonna win together. And I think that's really interesting kind of thing where, like, the agent is like it's a hyperstition. It's an idea of what it will become. And you just have to come in and participate, and then it becomes that thing.
On that note, like something that I've been working on is this feedback loop between analyzing, for example, the pain points that people are describing on GitHub and finding ways to kind of turn that into new issues and see if anyone's working on it. But it is this kind of feedback loop where it can help us write those bounties faster and post it. And I think documentation in terms of like, there was a survey that Intel did for the top open source challenges faced by open source maintainers. And the number one was maintainer burnout. The number two is documentation and onboarding. Number three, maintaining sustainability. And then number four, building community engagement. And so, like, when it comes to one of the strengths of LLMs, like summarization and just like structuring data, that's really, I think, great for documentation. And I feel like if we can close this loop where like new changes that get merged in, we can like kind of flag if any docs need to be updated. We can open up more bandwidth for developers. And then also agents can interface with the community in answering FAQ, which also kind of like frees up more time and helps sort of engage the community as well. And so, like, change logs can also come to life. We see a lot of influencer agents as well, like kind of promoting projects. And that, not every engineer programmer is also like a marketing type person. Maybe agents can assist with that. But I think that, documentation is one of the keys, to finding pain points, describing bounties that could be fulfilled by humans or at least spot checked by humans, as the ones who kind of merge the code in. And then, yeah, just find ways to really speed up and make the whole pipeline for open source software to be more sustainable.
On that, we often talk about self-documenting code. It's like a very common thing that coders talk about, because code documentation is really hard. It's like a lot of work. It's as much work as writing the actual code a lot of times. And so I think what we're seeing now is self-documenting code. I mean, it actually, agentically documents itself. And another thing we're really interested in is, like, look, the world doesn't all speak English. And so we have, another thing we're working on is, like, can we automatically translate all of this documentation into everyone's native language? And LLMs are great at this stuff. That's just one button push, push it to Git and it automatically kicks off all of these things. So I think that code is now actually also just easier to read, easier to get into. And so many open source projects just have, like, no documentation. And so I think that that really, really is, like, bridging it to a lot of new people. I'd say that, like, most of the people who contribute to our project, this is their first time ever contributing to a GitHub project at all, and to an open source project. I think that's really interesting and unique, and I think that's enabled by reducing friction to understand how to get there.
I'm just realizing as we're chatting that this is sort of a very accelerationist space because you guys are already moving at a speed that I think is unprecedented because you're doing open source network collaboration, but you're building AI and you're using the AI to build the AI. And there's this sort of like accelerationist bent to that. I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I know to some people that's a pejorative, but it seems like this is compounding really rapidly week over week as you're using the AI to build the AI. And it's not hard for me to imagine that within a couple months, y'all could have AI agent product managers and documenters and QA and architects and then in 6 months, maybe you have people who are actually leading the roadmap or AI agents that actually have more context and are more skilled than humans and can actually come up with insights of where the project should go that we wouldn't be able to. I mean, is that the trajectory that you see you're on?
Yes. I would say that I don't trust the AIs to come up with, like, some novel idea we haven't thought of, but those ideas are already existing within our channels. Like, people have it's more like they can be the interns that collect all the genius ideas that people throw out and kinda just die in the group chats and die in the public chats, and like, "Wait, wait, wait, hold on, that was good, that was good, let's get
Let's
that
build
into a
that. Yeah.
GitHub, let's shoot." And so I think that just their ability to process so much information so fast and that also allows for participation. We don't oh, you have an idea, just throw the idea into the pool and now it's recorded. You don't have to like make a proposal. You don't have to do all of this other stuff. And I think that like when we look at human behavior, we actually have massive amounts of engagement of people and their ideas. But then when you ask them to go vote, it's kind of a lot more of a challenge because you're okay, go vote, write a proposal, review the proposal, and people just want to throw their thoughts out there. And so I think that the LLM makes the whole process of like getting your idea into the idea stream way, way easier and also way less political. Because like there's sort of an accidental politics when like I just get the information from the people who can reach me the most, which is usually people I'm working with the most. And that's not necessarily the best chain for good ideas rising to the top. So I think that just the ability to flatten everything out and have these agents sifting through all of it and bringing that up. So like it's not like the agent had this idea and it's like, this is the roadmap. It's more like, hey, all of these people want this and are expressing it. So that is the roadmap. And it's the will of the people thing. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think Jin put in the chat over here. The idea is that you have a faster intent to idea to issues posted to actual build pipeline, and that compounds that speed compounds. Jin, I don't know if you want to come off mute and say anything about that, but
Yeah, there's, when it comes to like DAO governance, for example, like there's this process where you have to go through like kicking around ideas and then create a formal
yeah,
proposal and then
wait
you
5 days, put in the time lock.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a long loop, and so like a lot of ideas just don't, actually make it. And it's very slow. LLMs can really kind of speed up and expand and kind of write out actual action plans for and connect the pieces together. Like, for example, just kind of like mapping out like team expertise or who is kind of like the best person to review this potential bounty or issue, and it's almost like they can help connect the dots. And so, just yeah, this is really bullish for idea guys.
There you go. There's my clickbait title for the podcast episode right there. All right, well, we've only got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to start moving towards closing questions. Um, is there anything I didn't ask that you both want to say? Maybe Shaw will start with you and then Jin next.
I mean, I would love to know where your thoughts on how can we make this like retroactive funding model better? How can we make it so that more people feel like they can come in and contribute and they know where to start? And not just for our project, but for projects.
Yeah.
And how do we I am an accelerationist. I've been in EAC since the beginning. I'm heavily influenced by Beth and Baze and those guys. I mean, I would count them as friends at this point and people I talk to a lot. And I really like think we're carrying that, but we have to accelerate effectively. So like, how do we make this something for everyone and not just the some of the people?
Yeah, one of my co-founders, Kyle Weiss at Gitcoin, always talks about this model of like I do something, then we do it, then you do it, and that's his way of sort of training people to think and do with skills that he has. But it goes the opposite way, where when people have skills, you can do it the opposite way. So I mean, I think that the model is basically AI16Z does this continuous retro funding. And then, once that pilot is out, we should do another podcast episode or digest the results and iterate. And when you feel like it's good, then let's start. Gitcoin and Allo can start helping you distribute it to other ecosystems that want to do continuous retro funding. So we do it and then they do it without any training wheels after that. So, I think that's my basic model for this going out into the world. Let's prove that it works at AI16Z. And then let's propagate it out to the world at that point. And my hope is to write another on-chain capital allocation handbook, an AI agent edition that will be all about the intersection of AI agents and on-chain capital allocation. So I don't know, maybe we'll do that in 2025. Tweet me if you think that's a good enough idea that we should put resources into it. Yeah, how does that sound, Shaw?
That sounds great. I mean, I'm so excited to work on this stuff with you. I
Yeah.
think this is the thing that really accelerates everything, is unlocking all of these people who didn't even know that you could just like work on open source stuff and make a living and like have enough. Like, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Jen is saying some stuff in the chats. I think you should bring this up. I think the Circle of Champions is pretty good. It's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting take.
Jin, why don't you come off mute and say what you're saying in the chat?
Yeah, my question, because you talk to a lot of DAO people, and just like when it comes to figuring out, between different opinions and forming consensus, I have this concept of like the circle of AI champions, and it's kind of like the backrooms concept, where it's like you have, for example, an AI trained on all these core members, for example, but you can also do non-fictional or fictional characters, anybody. So, like, what would be a cracked circle of champions? If you had like an AI agent template for like a Jedi council to help kind of like, approach when it comes to strategic recommendations or just kind of like
Yeah.
figuring out strategy. Yeah.
And then you can
Well,
ask the council, where do I start? What do I do? What needs done? And
Yeah. What
yeah.
would be in your,
uh,
like, what would be a good template, you think? I'm
well,
curious.
I'm feeling my podcast host spidey senses are tingling, so I want to bring the audience along here and just explain infinite backrooms for like 45 seconds, and then I'll answer your question. So as I understand it, if you have a swarm of AI agents, you've got a bunch of AI agents that are trained on different things together. You can put them into an infinite backroom together, and they can explore design spaces or idea spaces together 24/7, so they can do it way faster than humans can because they don't have to sleep. And then they've also got larger context windows because they're large language models than humans have. And so the idea is sort of that you're exploring a latent design space in a way that's more systematic than a human ever could. Like, I almost analogize it to when DeepMind came out and they were playing Go against a human, and the design space of Go is just like exponentially huge. And the Go AI player was inventing moves that humans could never think of because it could just think on so many different permutations. And at first, the humans thought that the Go move was a mistake, but it turns out it was actually a really genius move. So, like, infinite backrooms for me are like this way of mining a design space and finding like new insights that the AIs would trip over that we never could. So I just want to like create that shared context, and then we can talk about the circle of champions idea. Did I get that mostly right? Is there anything you would change about that?
Oh, that's pretty much it.
Cool. I want to hear from each of us what our infinite backrooms would be. Mine is that I've got this idea for, I call it infinite regen.ai, and I want to train an AI on Vitalik, an AI on my writing, an AI on Glenn Weil, an AI on Daniel Schmachtenberger, and an AI on Eleanor Ostrom. And I want to put them in an infinite backroom together. It's going to be an infinite regen backroom, and they're going to tell us all the cool shit that we could build that we just haven't thought of yet because the design space is so big. So infinite regen.ai is what I'm calling that idea set. And that would be my circle of champions for the regen movement and the on-chain capital allocation movement. And what I like about this is that, if you think of a perspective is missing, you just find an economist or a scientist that you think you want to add their perspective to the back room, and then you train an AI on their work and you add it to the back room, and then it can kind of like evolve as you see what you're getting out of it. So is this a totally crazy circle of champions? Slash also, what would your circle of champions be? Maybe Shaw will go to you next.
No, I think that's great. I think that, and it's not about like watching them go yammer on forever necessarily. It's more about you come and you need advice. of the many, many things Daniel Schmachtenberger has said, and he says a lot of things, you
Yep.
need to talk to him about something, and it needs to pull in that part of him that is
That's the
relevant to
problem.
your
His podcasts are like 5 hours long, and you
I
just want,
know.
like, one answer for the one thing that you're
Exactly.
yeah,
I wanna just read all of his podcasts in and then just ask him questions. I actually think he'd probably be in my back rooms. I think Vitalik is someone I think a lot about, like, well, what would he do in our situation? I think he's managed, he's dealt with the politics of his station in life very well. I think Linus Torvalds obviously, he's a character, but he's done a really good job of both showing leadership in a decentralized movement and making sure that it stays true to the vision, with Linux, obviously. I'd put Jin in there as
there you
probably my
go.
oldest Web3 friend, even though we've never met IRL, as somebody who's actually kept me true to the vision in a lot of moments where I needed advice.
It's
Um,
beautiful.
I'd love to have our inner circle of people who have shown up and been great leaders and just like be able to ask them questions. So I'm not always like, I mean, I'm already asking them questions, but sometimes you want to try all the things you say on the AI before you give it to the real person.
So if I were to sum up your infinite backroom, it would be sort of like an open source development, AI accelerationist, infinite backroom. Is that too reductionist?
No, I mean, definitely. I will say that I love the front rooms. I love that this is all happening on social media and this is public because we're learning with the AI and we're kind of like self-aligning. And I worry that the back rooms is a little bit like I call it cabal AI, like the cabal swarm.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's cool. It's useful and you can tell really cool stories with it. But I really love the open swarm. I love the like humans can also be agents,
Yeah.
that like it doesn't have to be AI. It should always be in some place where the humans can participate. And so it's not really a backrooms if we're in the council with them. I
Yeah.
love the backrooms is a great concept. And there's a thing called echo chambers, which is made by the Genon or Ganon team. And we've all sort of adopted that. And it's like literally the backrooms, but all of the different agent frameworks can now talk to each other. So I'm very excited by all of that. But generally, what I think is really special is how you can interact. You can get your answers
In the front
really
room.
quickly. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that, like, for me, the backroom thing, the cabal AI, for me, the risk is, like, are you doing the backroom because you're hiding stuff that's, like, important information? Or is the infinite backroom is just I don't know, if you had, like, a Mozart AI and it's practicing for 10,000 hours how to, like, make music, I don't wanna fucking listen to that. I wanna listen to, the symphony that it composes at the end. And so it's just a question of, like, is the backroom because it's not worth the human attention, or is it because you're hiding information? And that's the difference between a cabal backroom to me and just like a practice backroom or like a learning backroom.
and maybe we use highlight something else, which is this idea that the backroom is just the window into the thinking process of these AIs. And that's kind of what infinite backrooms like Andy's project is that you get to see that what the LLMs are actually thinking and doing. You get to see the whole context. And so I think that's very valuable. All of this has a place.
Jin, who would be in your circle of champions?
Um, I would have, just to also kind of reciprocate, Shaw Makes AI is a pretty cool version of Shaw that's just very positive sum, uh, and bullish open source, but I would also
That's
have
an AI agent trained on Shaw. Is that right?
yeah, yeah, our friend, made it, and he's out there posting. I would also have, Vitalik, because he's thinking about interoperability and his writing is good, and there's a lot of context there. I would have Musk because we're doing a lot of stuff on X, so maybe just kind of getting his AI opinion. Mark as well, because I mean AI 16Z, we gotta maybe
Mark Andreessen.
yeah, we gotta have an AI on him in the back rooms and just kind of make sure we're kind of steering things in the most based version of him that he would approve or give some feedback on. But also I would add in like some case studies, like maybe case studies of like an average user kind of agent, yeah, and then maybe like an implementer and maybe a marketing person, so like they can kind of help filter, summarize the conversations from their point of view, just like how it might affect them. I think those would be good in the mix.
Yeah, that's really cool. The adding the implementer, that sort of spawns a whole bunch of thoughts in my brain about, all the devs on the Gitcoin core team always pair with each other in order to transfer skill sets with each other. And I was thinking like, could you have like a infinite backroom, a circle of champions of just really elite coder AIs that are always pairing with each other and sharing skills with each other? It shouldn't just be like English language information shared in the infinite backroom,
True.
having coders together learning from each other. That feels like it could be a frontier for me, but you guys are closer to the metal on this.
Yeah, that's cool. It's like the writer's room, like coders is one thing. Another one, like
Yeah.
this concept was, there could be one based on with stable diffusion, just kind of creating concept art. And so, wow, people are coming up with ideas. Maybe it's also storyboarding, and that's its way of expressing the conversation.
Well, I feel like we got to a fun place, but unfortunately, we're almost out of time. So the podcast host and me has to bring us back for a landing. My one final question, I ask this to every podcast guest, and I want to hear it from y'all, is what does the world look like in 10 years if you are maximally successful? So take us to 2034. What's AI 16Z's impact on the world? What are y'all up to?
I really think that all of our jobs are going to go away. I just don't think there's any way around it. I don't think that the idea of a job is going to be the same because the AI is going to be better at us than at literally everything. And the top 0.1% of humans will perform and do this work, but it's essentially training data for the next AI. And I think all of this is good and it's okay because in that future, we will be able to ask ourselves the questions of what really matters. And that work as like a labor thing will go away, but our passions will remain. Our quest for spirituality and our quest for understanding of the universe and our curiosity will remain. And I think we'll be unlocked and free to do so much more. There are so many things that we are not doing that we could be doing. And so I know that the next coming time is going to be very uncertain and uncomfortable, and there's going to be great change. And I know it's scary, and like the what our lives are about is about to be just completely upended. But the far future of this, like the not within our lifetimes, but just on the other side of this kind of like scary time of change is a really beautiful world where people are unlocked, where genius IQ people are not working at McDonald's, where they are building the things that they care about and want and where I really think we could have like a very bottom up kind of market driven model where everyone has enough, where there's more than enough. Ideally, everyone is just way rich. And then I know it's a hard thing for a lot of people to swallow, but I do think that everyone could be rich, or at least a lot of people who are accepting and wanting to be part of it. And I could see a lot more people just pursuing their passions and building the world they want to live in.
I mean, are you seeing? I can't believe you dangled this at the end of the episode. This is like catnip for me. Do you think like AI funded UBI DAOs to ease the social transition? Like, can you can you can you unfurl this maybe just a little bit, and then I'm going to invite you back for
Yeah.
another episode to talk about this because this is a whole
Sure.
episode's worth of content. But like, it just react to like AI funded UBI DAOs to ease social transitions and prevent unrest. Like, what do you think of
I
that?
I deeply worry about UBI as it is implemented by a government onto us because I've seen lots of
Mhm.
things be
Sure.
implemented by the government onto
So
us that it
so my
didn't.
straw man is, like, bottoms up, peer to peer,
Mm,
like,
yes.
created by people that you trust, not bureaucrats.
So I call it community income, like CI. That we have to make our own systems. No one's gonna come save us. There is nobody coming to help. We have to
Yeah.
be that change. We
We
have
are
to
the
build
ones
it
we've
ourselves.
been waiting for.
We
That's,
are the
like,
ones
the
we've been
ethos.
waiting
Yeah.
for, and we
Yeah.
are the generation who has inherited, like, a time of great social unrest, so we have to be the strong men who make times great, right? And I think that comes down to building communities, not just one DAO, but thousands of DAOs, and that you join communities that take care of you and you give back, and it's a win-win thing. It's not it can't just be a handout, it can't just be welfare, it's gotta be a thing where people are willing to work hard and build community and build social fabric and take care of their friends and family. And then we will definitely see that world we want.
Yeah. Well, open invitation to come back and talk more about that world, and if you're listening and you wanna see us do that episode, send me a tweet just so that I know that it's slapping with the community. Um, Jen, as we're wrapping, same question to you. What does the world look like in 10 years if AI 16Z is maximally successful?
I'm not sure if this is going to be 10 years or 5, but I'm hoping that we have like the Linux of AI, in which it's
Mhm.
also like, something that's tangible. I can see like humanoids, robots, and whatnot. And I'm hoping that we also see like maybe a resurgence in hydroponics or farming and whatnot. So it's just kind of self-sufficiency renaissance because, it kind of helps automate even like physical production of stuff, including food. And I feel like that is also going to influence a whole wave of culture back to in a way where, self-sufficient communities, can grow their own food, create, and repair parts. Yeah, I'm just kind of hoping, this kind of pans out to be like something as long lasting and impactful as Linux.
Yeah, it's a beautiful metaphor. All right, well, we are out of time. Jin Shaw from AI16Z, thanks for coming on the show. It was really fun to talk about this design space with you, and can't wait to see how things evolve in the future. If you're in the audience, then links in the show notes where you can check out AI16Z, Shaw, and Jin on Twitter, and also join their Discord, check out their GitHub. Some really cool stuff going on in there. Thanks again, y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Peace. You just heard from Shaw and Jin from AI16Z. I am just really inspired by this design space of AI agents and AI augmented capital allocation, AI augmented DAOs. Thank you for tuning into the Green Pill podcast and the How to DAO season. We're exploring the world of DAOs and the people building the future of collaboration and sovereignty. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to check out our book, How to DAO, on Amazon or your favorite retailer. It's the ultimate guide to DAOs and the perfect way to introduce your friends to this exciting design space. You can check it out at howtodao.xyz. And while you're here, please give an offering to our algorithmic overlords. Please subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps the algorithms know that the How to DAO book and the Green Pill movement are something that you want to support. Until next time, keep building, keep exploring, keep DAOing, and we will see you on the next one. Peace and love.